Hello, everybody. Welcome to the GodCentral Podcast. This is episode 5, and we've got Frances Norris on, who's going to be talking about her upbringing. She's had a really interesting story that she's going to share with everybody. So, first of all, thank you, Frances. I just got finished editing the podcast, and oh my, everything that could go wrong went wrong. We had audio issues, we had internet issues. There was like a lag between myself and Frances, so there's a few bits where we're sort of talking over the top of each other. Then when it was all recorded, everything on my laptop died. My laptop just died on me. But anyway, we fixed it. I've got back pretty much everything I can do. It's a little bit different to how it used to be because I lost a lot of stuff. But let's get into it. Right, we're recording. Hello, Frances.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, fine. Thank you now.
Yeah.
Getting used to it.
Getting used to being at home with COVID? Well,
Yeah.
during COVID.
Well, I prefer to be at home with Nod, but, COVID will do.
How is 2021 so far?
Well, a bit disappointing, I think, for everybody. But, we've only just started the year. But I think at this rate, I think we'll all be very glad to see the back of this one as well. I think
agree.
Everybody feels they've put a whole year on hold. But at the end of the day, we have to do what we have to do. We've got to fight this virus. We've got to eradicate it if we can.
Absolutely. At least this year, though, we've got the the hope of the vaccines as well. So hopefully that will, a few months down the line or several months down the line, even hopefully that will help things out a little bit. It might make the end of the year a little bit nicer than the end of last year. Maybe. You don't know.
Well, at least we have hope. That's the most important thing at the moment, is the hope that we are going to come out of this, that this is not the end. I have faith that will be true. And we might end up having to live with it actually for a long time, but having the scientists having worked so hard that hopefully we'll be able to control it. That's probably the important thing, is to control it and learn to live with it.
That's it. Yeah. Get back to some sort of normality.
Yeah.
Whatever normal is nowadays, I don't know. We'll see. So on the podcast, I like to get the other person to introduce themselves. Well, you don't need any introduction, do you, Frances? You are pivotal within GodCentral.
I don't know about that. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have seen me running around but don't really know who I am.
or what it is you do. But you do a lot. You're just behind the scenes. You're there making sure that everybody's safe.
Well, hopefully. But that is probably one of the major parts.
It's a lot easier to do when we're in a church, though, when we're meeting together.
So I have great difficulty in doing it online. What's that child doing over there? Where's mum and dad?
It's the last thing you need on a Zoom call, isn't it? Eh?
Absolutely.
All right, so I normally like to get the other person to describe themselves and their background.
Okay.
Describe your background for me, Norris. It's rude, isn't it? Describe your background for me, please, Frances.
Right, my background. I'm a wee Scot, actually. Mm-hmm. I might not sound it, but I was born in Scotland, and I was in a family of 4 at the time. But by the time I was nearly 4, I was brought down to England and ended up in Dr. Bonanno's, a home, where my father became mentally unwell, and ended up in hospital and was unable to look after us. So that was sort of my beginnings. But at that age, of course, I didn't know about illness. And thankfully today we're much more aware of mental illness, particularly in men. So for me, I was brought up mainly in a children's home, which wasn't very pleasant. But we were all together, all four of us, and did see a little bit of my dad when I was very young, but then he disappeared off the scenes, and eventually we went to live with his parents in Harlow.
Okay.
And generation grandparents, they were in their 60s when they took on four of us. So, and
how old was you when you went
I was
to
the youngest at
oh, go on, you were just going to answer it.
to my
how old
grandparents.
was you when you went to your grandparents?
I was, yeah. I was 9. So my sister was 13. Okay. So she's the eldest. So that's quite a difficult age range, isn't it, for anybody, even if you've been bringing up the children from the very beginning. But that was the most difficult time, I think, for my grandparents. And they were a different generation, and it was quite harsh and hard, and particularly for the girls, because that generation, girls did all the house duties and the cooking and the washing, and the boys cut the grass. And that was it, really. So even at school, I couldn't take part in any activities after school because I had to go home at lunchtime to prepare lunch for my grandparents, and then I had to be home after school to get the washing done and do the housework and prepare the meal for everybody in the evening. So it was quite harsh, really, and
quite busy.
And very difficult, and that, very, very busy. No real social life for me at all. So I didn't make a great deal of friends at school because I didn't take part in anything. But the very first day that I moved to Harlow, there was a little girl waiting at the lamppost at the end of the pathway to my grandparents' house. And she came up to me, and as I got out of the car, and said, "My name's Susan. Will you be my friend?" And we're still very, very good friends today.
Oh, really?
We speak to each other every day. And so it's been a lifelong friendship, and she's more like a sister to me than just a friend. So I'm very grateful. About the whole of my time at Bernardo's, it was actually called Dr. Bernardo's then, and it was a Christian organisation. So I was actually christened there. So I was at church all that time, and when I came to live with my parents, being Scottish, they were high church in Scotland. So we continued going to church right up until I was 16, actually 17. And it was around about that time that my grandparents became very ill, and they died, and I blamed God for that. So for me, it was a lifetime of rejection through obviously my parents and then my grandparents. Sounds silly, but they died, so therefore they rejected me. And, and where was God in that?
Yeah, everybody has stages where they get angry at God. I certainly have. I know Eleanor has done as well, and we're probably not supposed to, but you get angry at loved ones sometimes, don't you?
Absolutely. It's a human trait, isn't it? And God knows that. That's the thing. But the amazing thing about that whole situation was that things were really quite bad, and I ended up having to sleep on the streets, sofa surfing, and so on, because the council felt that it was tantamount to encouraging me to be immoral, were the words they used, to actually house me. So the wonderful Stan Newins, who was the local MP at the time, said, "What do you think sleeping in the town park is doing for her then?" And he fought very hard, and eventually persuaded them to rehouse me, and they did so in a bedsit. So, I was really angry with everybody by then, that I'd been abandoned, I'd been rejected by everybody. I was worthless. I wasn't worth anything at all. And that was all, very, very sad. So I moved away from the church then, and didn't come back to it till much later in life. And that was not until after Ben and Daniel had become Christians.
Okay.
So I came back to God through Ben and Daniel.
So is that because Ben and Daniel were Christians and they was there in your life, or was it you going back to your old faith?
Well, Ben was first. Ben went off to Bible college, and then when he came back, and he was very much into the church, and I was very concerned at the local church. This was before he went to Bible college. I was very concerned at the church, going around knocking on people's doors, because I really don't think that is the way to approach anybody, because you're encroaching on their privacy, really. So I was very concerned about it. So my younger son said, "Leave it with me, Mum. I'll sort this out." So he went to go and sort it out, and ended up becoming a Christian and joining the church. So as I watched them, of course they were our sons, so we supported them. So when Ben was having his baptism, we went along and we supported them, and we went along to various things that they had on at the church. And then one Sunday I was at a baptism with them, when I just had this overwhelming feeling coming over me, and I stood up, and as I turned round, the pastor was behind me sitting down, and he said to me at exactly the same time, he said to me, "You don't stand a chance," exactly at the same time as I said to him, "I don't stand a chance."
Right, okay.
And within a fortnight, I went to the church on a Sunday. I went with them to the church on the Sunday morning, and there was an altar call for anybody that hadn't been saved, and that is the first and only time ever that I have been truly, truly slain in the Spirit.
Okay.
As I went up for that call, and I just went. And I said the prayer, and I just fell to the ground. I have been to various conferences and so on where that has happened to lots of people, which I personally don't believe is correct, and it wasn't for me, because this fella ran past me, punched me as he ran past me, expecting me, and I just stood my ground and went, "Well, that wasn't of the Spirit, was it?"
Yeah, I've certainly been to some churches in the past where I've questioned things myself, and I don't know. I walk out thinking to myself, because like at the time as well, I was a little bit more early on in my my journey, as it were, and I walked out thinking to myself, well, I'm a Christian, but I'm questioning what's happening. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know if that environment for me at the time, at least, was right for me to be in. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Because it's making me question what's happening.
Yeah, but I think as well, though, the fact that God expects us to question. He doesn't expect us to accept everything, except His word. Yeah. So if we've got questions, then we need to be able to feel safe enough to ask the question without being judged on it. because
true.
because we may not be mature enough at that time to actually, how do I take that back to the word? How am I going to find out if that was really true? So you'll speak to someone that you do trust, and we do question, and how are we going to learn things? We're going to learn things by asking questions, and we're going to learn things much harder by making mistakes.
Definitely.
That's a general rule, generally in life on this earth and in the and in the spirit as well. We don't just accept things as people say them. They're different people's interpretations. What does God say about it? Let's take it into the Word and see what He says, and really get to the truth in that way.
Definitely.
So
your journey was, it's kind of two journeys, isn't it? You had when you was young, I suppose you was, you had faith because it was in your family. It was what was done in Scotland at the time. You kind of fell out with God as things started going wrong for you. As what, you were 16, did you say? Roughly. And then fast forward a few years, that journey kind of starts up again. Would you say that because it was your, I don't know if it was your own choice or God, like putting you on that line, but would you say that now it's stronger because it was your decision to get involved in your faith, I suppose?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But having said that, on the day that I was baptized, I came up out of that water, and it's really strange because people talk about God coming into your heart. Well, as I came out of that water, it was as if my heart had been encased in a coating of plaster or paint that cracked, and God came out rather than in. So He was there all the time. And then as I looked back over my life, I realised that things could have been so much worse for me, and that God had actually been there all the time. If you think about, could have got involved in drugs, in booze, in living on the streets, all sorts of things. It never happened. That never happened to me, and I always managed to come through. And that wasn't because of what I did. I mean, I had to fight hard, but other people were fighting for me. But who was my champion more than anything was God Himself, and I realised that. And so it was real sweetness for me when I realised that He'd been there all along. But it still doesn't stop me trying to keep control of my life. So giving up my life to let Him control it is a lot harder, because I had to do it for myself from such an early age.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And of course it did, for me, the most difficult thing that I found was actually relating God as a father, because I didn't really have one. And so I didn't know what a father was. And but I could see it now. And of course I've seen it over the years with Nod, and how he's been with the boys. He was always the fun guy. Mum was the disciplinarian, and that came from my background. And it took me a long time to realise that you can't be that hard on children. Children need to be surrounded by love, but they do say that in those circumstances you either do the complete opposite to what happened to you, or you become the same. So I would say that I was the same to begin with, and then I had to make a conscious decision not to be.
To go the opposite way.
Because it wasn't, to go the opposite way. So I really, for me, that's how that happened. But then God gave me an even better life, because suddenly I went back to Bernardo's and got my file. And the file was read to me because the social worker said that you may think you know your life, But when I read this to you, it will come out completely different. And it did. I had always been told that my mother never wanted me or wanted any of us, and that my father had abandoned me. And that was not true at all.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, my mother had tried very hard to get us. In those days, a woman who has an affair was known as a wanton woman and wasn't to be trusted to look after children. And that's why she lost us. But she tried us very, 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 very hard to get us back. And in my file were letters from her, letters from my father. So the whole thing was all about miscommunication, really. And so from that time, I went in the September to Bernardo's and got my file, and by the end of October, I'd met a brother that I never knew I had.
Oh, really? Okay.
I went on I've read about him there was reference to him. There's a lot of information there that shouldn't have been there, should have been blanked out, but it was there. So I then went on a search. And when I start something, I'm very determined, I'm afraid. And within 2 weeks, I was talking to his son.
Okay.
My father was no longer living with the family. His father was no longer living with them. But he put his mum on the phone, and she knew everything about me.
Oh, right.
She knew all about me. So she gave me my brother's phone number, and I phoned him. And it was just amazing. He wanted to phone me back. And I thought, I must have blown it. I must have said something wrong. He's not going to ring me back. But he did ring me back. And the reason he rang me back, because he thought I was in Australia, because that's what he'd been told. And he didn't want me to pay for the phone call. So within a couple of weeks, we'd met. And honestly, Rob, I can't tell you, it was unbelievable. We met, and it was as if we had never been apart. Our mannerisms were the same. We were on the same level, and it was just as if we'd lived together all our lives, when of course we hadn't. And he'd lived on his own with mother, whereas I was obviously with my other siblings. But the most amazing thing, if we go back to rejection, he's a musician, and he had a gig that night, that first night, and he was saying goodbye to me as he went off to the gig. And honestly, standing behind him was a vision of Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, this man is not a Christian. He believes in God, but he's certainly not practicing, and I'm not sure that he even believes in Jesus. But there was Jesus standing behind him, and my brother came over to me, and he whispered in my ear, "I am coming back. I'm not leaving you."
Okay.
And in that moment, I thought, how did he know that I was feeling like that? The only way he could have known was through Jesus. And we are very, very close. And it's been an amazing journey. And I found another brother as well, just recently, who's in the last sort of 5 years, who is a year older than Ben.
Oh, okay. So much younger.
So, much younger. That was my father's son. So, I'm in touch with him, keeping contact with him. But, God is so good. He chooses the family that we're born into. But circumstances, what the adults do, what we do as people, can change the path somewhere along the line. But that doesn't stop God bringing you back onto the walk that he wants you to be on. And he kept me safe, and he gave me 2 more siblings, which have been very positive,
Definitely.
you know, because relationships have not necessarily been positive between the original siblings, and very hurtful and painful. And so to have two positive relationships that are blood related to me has been absolutely amazing. And I can only praise and thank God for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Families are difficult things, aren't they?
But a family is really, really, really important to me. And I would, you know, I think I may have said this a little while ago that, you know, I would literally die for any member of my family. I would put my life on the line for them, because it is so important to me. Because it was when my granddaughters reached the age that I reached when I was put in the home, was when it really hit me, because they were girls. I had boys, and I was looking at these little girls each time, and it upset me so much to think, how could anybody put such a defenseless child into a home? You know,
yeah,
where was the rest of the family? And you know, but looking at my granddaughters, that broke my heart. And that was a real breaking point. But you know, I've come through. God's sustained me. He's helped me. Nod's helped me. The boys have helped me. So you know, everything's good. Everything's rosy. You know, you know,
you've got back on that main path, as it were. You know, you're
absolutely
off the side street back onto the main path. Okay, so you've come back to your faith. Your two sons are Christian at this point. You've attended various different churches over the years, because I've done a bit of speaking with Nod in the past in the car on the way back from football. Well, I say I've done a lot of speaking. I didn't. Nod did.
You like me then?
Yeah. Bless him. What is it other churches do well? What do you think? What is there anything you see other churches doing properly that our church should incorporate, or other churches should, you know, really like pay attention to and sort of merge into their church, as it were?
Well, I would say, let me just correct one thing. Daniel, my youngest son, is no longer a Christian. So you know, we need prayer. You know, obviously we're praying for him, but you know, it would be good if the rest of the church, you know, in their prayers held any relative that we know that isn't saved actually comes to Saviour through Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But I would say, because we've come back now to, again, a fellowship, a church that is a small community, and clearly we have been, even when our first fellowship fell apart, we went to St Mary's in Old Harlow, and I used to, as a child, was at St Mary at Latin near Mark Hall School there. So in the main churches, I would say it's a bit like no matter how good the vicar is, he's paid by the piper, so has to conform. And in the mainstream churches, you know, very, very good for people that actually find it nice and easy to sit in the same place, to have everything read out to them, and even prayer, and there is a set reply. There's no freedom in that, which really brought us back to rejoining. We did come to GodCentral when they were in the Playhouse many years ago, but it wasn't for us. And then we came back again, and I just love that family. It's family. I haven't got to know everybody in God Central. I do tend to be very, very busy, as you say, and that's in some ways is a way of me hiding a bit.
Right. Okay.
I'll do anything, but I don't tend to on a Sunday get an awful lot because I've got all these different hats. Don't get time to really chat to people. So actually, the lockdown's been a bit of a godsend for me. Because you've got a captive audience, haven't you? Yeah, I can actually. Well, I've got a captive audience on Zoom. I can chat to people, which I wouldn't normally have the time to do. So that's obviously something I'll have to address when we do come back into church. But they each have their own good points. But I prefer the whole family bit. I like the idea that. You're not living in each other's pockets, but we're not just Sunday people.
Yeah.
We want to be accountable to one another. We want to be a family, and given my life, then that's got to be where I need to be. In a family.
So it's all about the relationships then, going back to relationships and why they're important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so I have found it, having been out of church for a little while, for about 4 or 5 years, in the wilderness, if you like, doing what I felt God wanted us to do, which was to service Peter and Jane during their twilight years when they weren't able to get out. But of course that's very isolating, isn't it? But coming back into a family church, it's been a little bit more difficult for me to get to know people, because I try not to sort of like push myself forward. Oh look, I can do this, I can do that. But if I'm asked to do something, then I will take it on. And if there's a need somewhere, I will try and fill that need for them. But that meant that really I'm keeping myself busy instead of actually really getting to know the people within the church.
Yeah.
And so that's why this really has been really, really wonderful for me, because I've actually been able to get to talk to different people and try and understand more about who they are, where they're coming from, and how we can serve one another, really.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, I said the same thing to Holly on the last podcast, that we was going to Church of England church before we come to God Central. And do you know what? Like, I liked the church. I liked the like the team at the church and the people that attended, but there weren't any of that. There weren't any of the community or the relationship, as you say. And we just felt sort of just secluded. We'd go along every Sunday. We was going there for a long time. We was probably going there for, I want to say 4 or 5 years. And in that whole time, we barely spoke to anybody, So when you come to God Central, or when we come to God Central even, and all of a sudden everybody's speaking to you, it definitely leaves a good impression. But I found it weird at first. I thought, well, what's all this about? Like, why is everybody so interested,
It could be overwhelming, can't it, at times when that happens, because you're not expecting it.
It's definitely a good problem to have, that people are showing an interest in each other. Instead, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, at least within the church situation, unlike the world situation, you're not nosy Parkers. Think, well, what do they want to know that for? Because they're genuinely interested in who you are, and actually want to draw you in to the family. I ended up doing quite a lot of work for St Mary's in Old Harlow, because I did all the assembly work in the schools, and because I trained as a Bible explorer when I was at Commonside, a Bible explorer in instructor. So I've got all that under my belt, and then I've done loads of assemblies with because I was part of an open door as well. One of the first groups setting that up. And of course, I've done a lot of work with children. I was a scout leader for many years.
So another thing I know you for, well, I should imagine a lot of people know you for, similar to the last podcast, is you're as well as being busy, you're constantly helping people. And I don't want to say names, but there are people that you look after, you care for, you help out, which again, as a Christian, it's one of the things we're called for, isn't it? It's one of the things,
Absolutely.
looking out for one another, caring for each other. How important do you think it is to yourself, to the church community to take care of each other?
For me, it is absolutely essential. It's an essential part of what God has called us to do, and to my mind, if we can't look after those that God has already brought to us, so that would be family, friends, congregation, then we have no right going out into the community trying to spread the gospel, because we're not living it. And we must not ignore what we've already got. We've got to take care of and nurture. Yeah, we can do it alongside it, but for goodness sake, do not forget that you've got people within your congregation and around you that need that help and support, and they need God's love. So we show that to him in our actions. If they're not already Christians, well, and even if they are Christians, even more so, because we all have times when we feel deflated, rejected, unseen, invisible. Then if you've got brothers and sisters around you that are looking out for you, taking care of you, I think it's an absolutely essential part of the gospel. I really do.
And that goes for not just on the Sunday, doesn't it? It goes for outside of church as well.
Throughout. I somebody did say to me once, with a young lady that I take care of, who's got mental health issues and dreadful background, and also has some learning difficulties. And somebody said to me, you're letting her take advantage of you. She's ringing you at 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning because she's lost somewhere, she's run away or whatever. You shouldn't do that. You must cut it off. I said, that's absolutely ridiculous, because life goes on 24 hours a day. And if someone is in great need, it doesn't matter what time of the day or night, they need you, and they need you now. And if that wasn't right for me to do, I believe that God would actually lay that on my heart. He would let me know, because I do believe in a lot of cases where people are seeking and listening, to hear God's. Well, I've never heard God's audible voice. God doesn't speak to me. Stop listening for the yes. If you're doing it right, you should have peace. If you're doing it wrong, he'll soon let you know. So listen for a no, not yes. Not always listen for a yes. Listen for a no, and if you have real peace about something, then you are clearly in God's will.
Absolutely,
for that.
It's just part of. It's just part of being in my opinion, anyway. It's also just part of being a good human being, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Looking out for one another.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you wouldn't want to. I don't get it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, by a long way. I forget people, my own family sometimes. I think, I ain't spoke to my nan in about 2 months. Do you know what I mean? But if you know somebody's going through a bit of a hard time, then check in on them. That's my opinion anyway. Just give that person a message, because you might make their day.
Yeah, if that was me, I'm a grandma, and if I hadn't heard from you in 2 months, I'd have been on the phone to you before then.
Yeah.
Find out what you're doing, boy.
Yeah.
How's it going then?
Yeah.
Are you ignoring me?
Sort yourself out. What are you playing at?
Absolutely.
And also, again, it goes back to inside of church, like what I was saying about when Eleanor and I come to Eleanor. We don't know who that is. Eleanor and I come to God Central. Yeah, it won't be me writing it though.
No, it's already written.
When we come to God Central and people are speaking to us, it's exactly what I said. It's like people actually care about you. Do you know what I mean? People are showing an interest.
Yeah.
Whereas my experience of, I'm not saying they're all like it. It's just my experience of the Church of England churches I've been to so far. It's all just very sort of like routine. Turn up on a Sunday, say the right responses to, Bible verses, etc. Sing a couple of hymns and go home again. And that was it.
Yeah.
That was my experience of Church of England. Whereas coming to God Central, have a conversation beforehand, have a conversation afterwards, have about 15 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
But I could never.
A good coffee at that.
Yeah. By the time Sunday evening come around, I couldn't sleep. I was wide awake.
Yeah.
But no, yeah.
But what a high to go to bed on, really. Having had such a wonderful experience.
Experience with God or coffee?
Both. People and God.
Absolutely. It's definitely one of the things that I think as a church we should continue.
Oh, absolutely. And it's something that we do very well. We do very well, and I like the the lunch together, once a month. I think that's amazing. We used to do that in Commonside. When I had my great niece and her brother living with us for a little while, and they used to come to church with us, and she always thought it was called Bring a Chair. Because it was bring a chair. She always thought it was bring a chair. Well, we got to take a chair, Auntie Frances. No, we haven't, darling. We just got to take food, and because we sort of do it buffet style, everybody bought a plate of food and things like that, and everybody mucked in and cleared up afterwards, and that's just wonderful. I mean, sharing a meal together as well, breaking bread together,
Definitely.
But I mean, breaking bread together, of course, it is also synonymous with reading His Word together.
Of course,
it's the same thing.
Of course, that's actually something I hadn't thought about. To be honest with you, one of the things I miss about actually meeting in person is those. It was the first Sunday of the month when we used to do it. It's been that long, I can't even remember when we've done it now. I really enjoyed that. Like I'd be that person that always forgot about it, so didn't turn up with food. So I was eating other people's food, but
well, not always does a full. He does a lot because he always provides for one or two other people, and we always bring loads of plates and knives and forks and things with us as well.
Yeah.
So we're always prepared. That's the scouting in me, but we're always prepared. And Nod does. He used to always do a fruit salad at the previous church. Great big bowl of fruit salad. He was famous for his fruit salads.
I'm going to remember that.
But So if you need we have a big do that we're all going to bring food, then get Nod to do the salad. He's really good with that. He's brilliant.
I'll message him. I'll message him after this. Okay, last question. And I tend to ask the same question to everybody because we're still going through this. So other than being COVID-free, because we all want that, what are your hopes for the rest of 2021?
For me, it really is about protecting the vulnerable, protecting our children, and for us to get that gospel out there.
Mm.
That is what I'm hoping for, and I just started to read a book by David Pawson. It's David Pawson did a whole series of going through the Bible, and he has a wonderful series of books. And I decided I wanted to take a look at Revelation.
Okay.
And David Pawson says that that there are 2 books in the Bible that the devil will try to stop you to read.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be Genesis, because it reveals everything bad that he has done, and Revelation. And Revelation is a book that is not widely read, and certainly isn't read in church, but is the most blessed book that we could read.
Yep. Yeah.
It's a peek behind the curtain. It's a take a look at how it was made. So we're peeking behind the curtain, looking at our maker. And so I'm really looking forward to actually getting into Genesis. That was only because I started reading that today. But I wasn't going to quote a verse from Revelation. But strangely enough, in a series that we're doing at the moment, it actually came up with a verse in the verse in Jeremiah that was really, really important to me, because I think that we need hope. We need hope. The world needs hope. And of course, it was Jeremiah 29, verse 11. Mm-hmm. For I know the plans I have for you, declared the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. And for me, when I first became a Christian, that was just a revelation, because as I looked back, I saw that there was always hope in my life, because he was always there. And as I look forward, I have that hope that I'm going to go to glory. And it's taken me really up to probably the last 4 or 5 years where I can honestly say to you, Rob, I do not fear death.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not afraid to die.
It's an interesting book.
I know.
It's an interesting book, Jeremiah, because there's a lot in there that will inspire.
Yeah.
That if we go back to a few years ago, I was going through a bit of a rough time, and there's I actually used it as part of an intro in one of the Sunday services, probably about a month ago now, and it's the potter and the clay, and about how you God will mold you how He wants you to be. You're still moldable. It doesn't matter if you've made, if your image at the moment isn't how God wanted it, He can still mold you to be exactly how He wants you to be. And to me at the time, I didn't realize it at the time, to be honest with you, but I've thought about that verse a lot in past years, and I think that verse is probably one of my favorite. It means a lot to me, and Jeremiah's full of them. Do you know what I mean? Jeremiah's got a lot of them. Just like yourself, really. Yours is from Jeremiah as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it is inspirational, and we all need hope, and we need to give our children hope. Children are very, very important to me, and I think that has really been laid on my heart because of my upbringing. And I look at children, and I look at people that are unable to defend themselves. Those that aren't completely sound of mind, those that have got mental health issues. When they're talking to you, it may sound as if they're talking absolute rubbish, and you're thinking that can't possibly be true. Always believe what a child or a young person or an adult tells you. Believe it, because that's what they need to hear. They need to hear that someone believes them. Now, whether it is actually true or not is beside the point. It's their truth. It's what they're living. So once you've gained their trust, you can then work through it and you can get them to see it in a different light.
That makes a lot of sense.
And God, and God's word, God's love, showing them God's love will make them see it in a different light, and it will give them the hope that they need to go forward. And that's really, really important. So I suppose that's the most important thing going forward into the future.
Yeah. So it's I suppose it's encouraging children to. We're going to be vulnerable, Rob, now. But I suppose if I think about my childhood, it wasn't terrible, but it weren't great at the same time, and I was quite withdrawn. Do you know what I mean? I was quite withdrawn, and it was only really looking back, speaking to people within this church, and I've had a few sessions with Christian therapists and stuff like that. It's only in that time that I realised that I was quite withdrawn as a child. So I think you're absolutely right there. You've got to encourage children to be themselves, I suppose.
Yeah, you need to encourage. I mean, but at the same time, we all need boundaries, don't we? Boundaries show you how much people care about you. So we all need boundaries. So as we're encouraging our young children, we we get an awful lot about political correctness and what you can and can't say, but we do need to teach them both sides, because for every action there is a consequence, be it good or bad. And so to correct their bad behaviour, they need to know what the consequences are. They don't have to necessarily experience the consequence, but they need to know what the consequence is in the action that they're portraying at that time. And if we don't tell them that, they don't know. And if you don't tell someone, if you don't tell someone that they've upset you, they've hurt you, and you just go all mardy and go in the mood and don't talk to someone for days, how on earth are they going to know?
Yeah, absolutely.
They think that what they've said has been okay, but obviously it isn't, because you've gone off on one, and but they don't really know. And then what we do is we go around the bushes, don't we? We don't tell them outright. Be open, be honest, be truthful, and life will be so much easier.
Definitely. That's something that I've learned. It's something I've learned from Eleanor, to be honest with you. That I used to have a habit of sort of going around the bushes, and people weren't getting the message, and it was her. It's just like just tell them. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, yeah, all right, we'll give that a go then. It definitely works better, but there is still, obviously, you've got to be careful about how you.
Of course you have, because you don't want to do the same thing. You don't want to respond in a way that is going to hurt them. Thankfully, none of us are perfect.
No, definitely not.
We'd have nothing to learn, and we wouldn't need Jesus if we were. So
no, you're right.
There's your hope: be imperfect and be in need of Jesus.
Okay. Shall we?
Don't hurt people along the way.
That's the biggest one, I suppose, isn't it? Don't hurt people along the way.
Finish it there.
Yeah, let's finish it there. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Well, it's lovely to talk to you.
Oh, no problem at all. It's a fascinating one, to be honest with you, because. All right. Well, thank you very much, Frances.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
You're in a better place.
Soon.
For everyone watching, remember to comment, like, us.
God bless.
See you later.
Okay.